You're listening to the Underdog Podcast with Scott Kujak, episode 83.
We went to some local sea cliffs just outside the city of Aberdeen, and it was not anywhere I'd climbed before because I'd only been living in Aberdeen a few months, so the whole area was quite new. I was still kind of discovering what the climbing was like there. And yeah, I led the climb. With hindsight, which is always such a wonderful thing, I can see that I should have just come down. Like, it was too hard for me. It was quite an overhanging climb, and my arms weren't strong enough. So I reached the point where I was underneath a small overhang and ran out of strength and shouted to my climbing partner, "I'm going to come off." So I very much knew that I was about to fall, but I couldn't really do anything about it. And I had a rope, but in Scotland we don't have bolts in the rock. We kind of put the protection into the rock ourselves, and the last piece of protection I'd put in came out. So I took a big swing, and with the rope swing and the stretch, I hit the rocks below. So I was on sea cliffs, and I don't really remember much until 3 days later when I woke up in intensive care and was told I was paralyzed from the chest down, and there began the whole new chapter.
This is the Underdog Podcast, and we bring you interviews from around the world of people including cancer survivors, war veterans, famous athletes, former drug addicts, entrepreneurs, amputees, and many more who became champions in the midst of life-altering adversity, providing you with an example on how to overcome your own challenges. This is your host, Scott Kujak, and I hope this episode ignites a fire inside of you to finish your underdog story. Thanks for joining me this week on Underdog Podcast. This week's guest, Karen, is a really special woman who has accomplished a lot throughout her life. She has traveled all over the world doing amazing athletic accomplishments. She has hand-cycled the terrain of the Himalayan Mountains. She has kayaked from Vancouver, Canada, up to Alaska. And she even won a silver medal and then later a gold medal at the Paralympics. She is a superwoman in disguise. You get to hear her story today. In the meantime, if you could please subscribe and leave a rating and review on any podcast platform that you listen to, it greatly helps promote this show and promote stories such as Karen's to other people who need to hear it the most. Then please follow us on social media. You can follow at underdog_podcast on Facebook or Instagram. Stick around to the end of the episode and get a glimpse into who's coming up next week. But until then, enjoy this episode with Karen. Welcome, everybody, to the Underdog Podcast. Today, I'm speaking with a guest who lives across the pond and lives over in Europe and has done miraculous feats, not only in Europe, but throughout the world on many different continents. I have Karen Darke on the line. She is a gold medalist and a silver medalist. Well, Karen has accomplished a lot, and we're going to talk about some of the different rewards and adventure-seeking feats that she's accomplished. But first, I want to ask you, Karen, where did your passion for adventure begin? And I know you're really into mountain climbing and cycling and whitewater rafting and all this stuff before you had an accident. Which area of adventure was your favorite growing up?
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't into all of those things before my accident. My main thing when I was growing up was, so my parents, I guess, were quite adventurous in that they took us climbing mountains and just doing stuff when we were kids. We always spent 6 weeks every summer camping in France and just living on a low budget and doing things. They were both teachers, so we had long holidays. So we just used to live simply in a tent and do lots of things. So I guess I kind of grew up with that. And they both traded their jobs and their home when I was 10 years old to go and spend a year living in America, in Oregon. So we did like a family exchange where you live in someone else's house and they taught over there. So I suppose that, although it's not kind of outdoor adventure, it's still quite an adventurous thing to do, and with a young family. So I suppose I grew up with it, really. But yeah, when I was a teenager, it was really rock climbing that was my sport, and just being in the mountains, whether that was running or used to do quite a bit of what we call fell running in England, sort of running in the hills, and rock climbing, and maybe a bit of caving and orienteering, so navigating in kind of wild terrain with a compass. So yeah, they were my sports, and I hadn't really got into doing any kayaking or the other things until after my accident.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I didn't know that you lived in Oregon for a little bit. Oregon's a beautiful state right there in the
Yeah, we
Pacific
lived
Northwest.
in Albany, and my mum worked in Oregon City. My dad worked in Albany, and in fact, I haven't been back there since until 2018. I cycled from Vancouver to Mexico down the Pacific coast, so we cycled the Oregon coastline. So that's the first time I've been back since I was 10 years old.
Oh, that's really neat. And we're gonna talk about all those different different treks that you've been on and through all the different continents and those accomplishments. In terms of rock climbing, you said that was your favorite, and I know when you had your accident, you were rock climbing. So when you were growing up and really found that passion for mountains and for different terrain and different cliffs, is that something that you wanted to pursue your entire life? And was it more of just like a hobby that you did every now and then?
No, I did it, I think from about the age of 14, 15, I basically was climbing every week, and it got more and more. So all my holidays, I went climbing, then ice climbing in Scotland, and then to the Alps, climbing the big mountains in the Alps. My first season in the Alps, I was just so blown away by being there. I was there as a kid walking, but never climbing. So yeah, we had all of our ropes and crampons and ice stuff. So we ended up climbing Mont Blanc and the Matterhorn in my first season, which was kind of interesting looking back because I realized there were people who had been their lifetime dream to climb these things. I was just so naive, but maybe a little bit too bold, really, to go and
Yeah.
just do those things. But anyway, yeah. So it was very much who I was shaping myself. I just loved it. I loved to be in the mountains.
That's so neat and that you had that passion at such a young age. I grew up in Florida, and Florida does not have any mountains, so I didn't have any friends growing up that were
No.
mountain climbers whatsoever. So what
Well,
happened?
I'm not really sure I had friends who were mountain climbers either. Like we lived, maybe I don't know why I how I got into it really, but the first trip to the Alps, I was with two or three friends, and they hadn't done any big mountain climbing either. So we had a book about ice climbing and photocopies of how to do crevasse rescue, and we just took ourselves up onto the glacier and stood there with our photocopies, just trying to figure it out. Like we didn't have an instructor or anything, so it was
Dang,
definitely self-taught.
trial by fire right there. And it's cool that each mountain just presents a new challenge and a huge difference going mountain to mountain. Whereas a lot of other sports that we do today can be monotonous, like running or things like track and field, like you're doing the same thing over and over again. Whereas mountain climbing is always different. What happened during your climbing accident? If you could tell us where you were and what your resulting injuries were.
So my climbing accident was in Scotland. It was just a regular kind of day out to climb, nothing spectacular. We went to some local sea cliffs just outside the city of Aberdeen, and it was not anywhere I'd climbed before because I'd only been living in Aberdeen a few months, so the whole area was quite new. I was still kind of discovering what the climbing was like there, and yeah, I led the climb. It with hindsight, which is always such a wonderful thing, I can see that I should have just come down. Like it was too hard for me. It was quite an overhanging climb, and my arms weren't strong enough. So I reached the point where I was underneath a small overhang and ran out of strength and shouted to my climbing partner, "I'm going to come off." So I very much knew that I was about to fall, but I couldn't really do anything about it. And I had a rope, but in Scotland we don't have bolts in the rock. We kind of put the the protection into the rock ourselves, and the last piece of protection I put in came out. So I took a big swing, and with the rope swing and the stretch, I hit the rocks below. So I was on sea cliffs, and I don't really remember much until 3 days later when I woke up in intensive care and was told I was paralyzed from the chest down, and there began the whole new chapter.
Yeah, definitely a tough transition in life. You've definitely made the most out of it. How far was that drop approximately?
About 10 meters. I went
Okay.
back quite a number of years later in a sea kayak to see the cliff, just to see it from where I'd, had this life-changing incident, probably about 10 years later. But it was all very dull and non-spectacular, really. Just a
Did it,
dirty sea cliff.
yeah. I was you mentioned you're paralyzed from the chest down. Is that because you broke your back, or what were your injuries specifically?
Yeah, so I broke my back at the chest level, T3, the third thoracic bone. I broke my neck, so I was very lucky not to damage the spinal cord in my neck because I would have lost my tricep use and my hand function if that had been a sever. And I broke both arms, my wrists, my skull, my lungs, my ribs, most things in my upper body. I landed kind of on my neck, head area. So yeah, my legs were okay. They weren't damaged.
A
But not much use
miracle.
when you can't use them.
Yeah. A miracle that you survived, and a miracle that you're only paralyzed from the chest down. Like you said, you broke your neck. Thankfully, you still have function with your arms and your shoulders.
Yeah,
There's
very lucky. And it is a miracle I survived. I think the doctors told my parents basically to expect that I probably wouldn't. And 3 months after my accident, a very close friend of mine died in a climbing accident. And actually, that was a real kick up the backside for me because I just suddenly really realized I'm alive and he's not. And I have to live this life and make the most of it. And maybe that really helped me move on in such a positive way. At his loss, I realized that, I couldn't focus on what I couldn't do. I had to live what I had.
Yeah, his life was not lost in vain. He definitely inspired you, and hopefully he inspired others as well. And I know that you are inspiring many around the world today. Before we go into what you're doing today, I want to ask you one question about that time when you were injured and you were lying in the hospital bed, realizing that, hey, I'm not going to be able to go rock climbing ever again and be able to use my legs. I've interviewed different people on the show who have been paralyzed from an accident of all different kinds of sorts. And one of the things I like to ask them is, how did you deal with mentally knowing that, hey, I know mentally I can go climb a mountain, I can do this, that, and the other, but now physically I cannot? And how did you handle that inner conflict within yourself?
Hmm. Well, first of all, I think there's a process of obviously kind of denial and just I didn't really know anything at that point about the mind-body connection and our ability to heal ourselves in a way in different aspects. But I still did. Someone said to me, just never give up hope on moving your feet. So for months, I used to just try and move my toes and my feet every day. And eventually, I guess it just reaches a point where there'd been no progress at all, and I just got on with the life that I had. So I suppose at first you go through that process of adaptation and change, and then I suppose it's just down to a simple choice. It's like, this is what I have right now. Maybe it will change, maybe it won't, but I can sit around and be miserable and be a really dull person to hang out with. Like, just make your friends all depressed as well. And that's my life, and I don't really want to live it like that. So to me, it just seemed a very simple thing of I have to just make the most of what I've got and try and find adventure and happiness in that. And in the beginning, I thought that would mean not having adventures. Like, it was so painful to see mountains and not be able to go into them that for a short while I considered just trying to change who I was. I don't know what I thought, but I just thought I'll live a life away from the mountains to kind of avoid that pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I realized very quickly that I couldn't do that. Like, that kind of life is part of me, and so I kept going back and finding different ways to be in that kind of landscape and interact with it. So lots of tricks of the mind I ended up playing with myself, and I suppose not turning away from that pain as well, just kind of feeling it and living it for a while until it got easier and until I could find a new way to be in that environment and feel happy.
Great perspective, a lot of wisdom there. And I like hearing that you removed yourself from the mountains for a time being just because it was too difficult to even see them. I think that shows a lot of strength on your end, because I think most people either would A, not return to the mountains ever again, or B, try to force themselves to like get over it by going to the mountains over and over again, trying to force themselves in the situation when probably wouldn't lead to the best outcome. What was your first event that you competed in after this accident? And from there, can you share with us some of the historic things that you've done in cycling?
So I would need to delete the word compete, because although I have become an athlete and won medals, met the first 15 years, I guess, almost, of being paralyzed. I didn't really do any of that. I did a little bit of wheelchair racing, but it really, in a way, I like doing some marathons, but in a way it bored me because I didn't want to spend my time traveling to cities and being in cities or running around a running track. Like, to me, a running track's not a very inspiring place compared to the mountains. So my heart was always in adventure, and my first big journey that I think was kind of like a rite of passage, if you like, was to cycle across the Himalayas from Central Asia, Kazakhstan, across to China and then Pakistan. So basically traversing the Karakoram Mountains by on a tandem hand bike. So you pedal it with your legs on the back and your arms on the front. And we just traveled independently, myself and a couple of friends. One of them towed a trailer with the frame of my wheelchair on it, and the wheels of my wheelchair were on the back of our tandem. And we just camped in the wilderness and just carried everything we needed to survive for 6 weeks through the middle of just, wildest Kyrgyzstan and
That is
China and
crazy.
Pakistan. And that was 3 or 4 years after my accident, and I guess that was like the life changer, if you know what I mean, to be
Hmm.
there in that environment, looking up at K2 and all these incredible, famous, big mountains, and realizing that I was in them and camping in them and living and breathing them. So yeah.
Did you have a guide for that tour, for that trip?
No. We just organized it all ourselves and flew to Kazakhstan and then just set off on the bike from the airport, and that was that. We just did it ourselves, totally DIY. No support vehicle, no guide, no nothing. And it was the first year that the border between what was kind of the old Russian states and China had ever been open. So it was really complicated to cross that border. We had to do a lot of advanced stuff. You had to be there at an exact time on an exact day so that these Chinese authorities could kind of invite you into the country. It was really complicated, but very cool.
Wow. Dang, I can only imagine the memories that you have from those 6 weeks with your friends and seeing those tall mountains and camping out in the wilderness and just leaning on survival those 6 weeks. That is an incredible story. And not only have you done that through Asia, but you've done it in other continents as well. Can you share maybe one of your other favorite ones on one of the continents that you've done?
Yeah, so that over the next kind of 10 years or so, I was working, but I was really fortunate to have a big employer who kept giving me time off with unpaid leave to go and have my adventures. So spent 3 months paddling by sea kayak from Vancouver to Alaska, which was massive because I had to leave the wheelchair behind for that time. Basically, just post it up the coast and maybe see it about once a month. And we were just
Wow.
sleeping on the beaches, like landing in the sea kayaks and sleeping on the beaches. That was a crazy trip, really, looking back. So yeah, crossing Greenland in a sit-ski, that was also a massive project in terms of getting out of my comfort zone. When you're paralyzed, you can't regulate your body temperature. So below my chest, I can get cold really easily, frostbite, hypothermia, whatever. And also just one of the biggest challenges to anyone with paralysis is toileting issues. So without
Mhm.
going into detail, but it is a massive thing that puts people off. Skincare and toileting issues, it's really easy to get pressure sores, or also it can take us an hour or more to go to the toilet, and it's not that easy. And when you're out in the wilderness, it's clearly not so easy to squat and hover somewhere in a woodland. So there's loads of aspects like that that became really especially complicated in Greenland, in those cold temperatures and things. So yeah, that took a couple of years of planning.
What did you do
Um,
to regulate your body heat?
so I basically discovered that if I don't get cold, if I don't allow myself to get cold in the first place, it's okay. It's once I get cold, it takes a really long time to warm up again. So in Greenland, it was really about never allowing the body I can't feel to get cold. So just lots of special equipment I had designed, like special sleeping bags for my legs with a zip on the front, and just a whole clothing layering system and little heat things inside my feet, inside my socks. In the end, it was funny because the rest of the team was so worried about me getting frostbite in my feet that they kept checking them. And then they realized that my feet were always so warm that they kept putting their hands in to warm their hands up again. So my feet and my legs came kind of like team heater.
That's hilarious. That's That's a definitely, I think, a kill two birds with one stone of checking on you, but also getting warm at the same time. What about the silver medal that you won in the 2012 Olympics, and then the gold medal that you won in the 2016 Olympics? Can you share what that feeling was like in that experience in both ways, and maybe what you learned from placing second in 2012 that helped you get first in 2016?
In 2008, hand cycling was included for the first time in the Paralympic Games in Beijing.
Okay.
And suddenly I thought, the next Paralympics is in London, like in my own country. And for the first time ever, there's a sport that I'm actually interested in doing. So I rode my bike every day, but I never raced. So I decided I would try and train to race. But any races I had done, or I entered a few races in 2008, 2009, and I would basically be last in them. There was no, sometimes it wasn't even a finish line anymore. Like the organizers had gone home and all the drink stations had packed up.
Oh no.
And the first kind of proper Paralympic sort of race that I did, I was also like last or nearly last. So part of me just thought, what am I thinking? I thought I was good at this because I ride my bike every day, but I've obviously underestimated actually that it's a different game in the Paralympics. Like it is a really high standard. I'm just a recreational cyclist who's fit but not race fit. So then it began a journey really of 3-4 years. I got a coach. I learned about how to train properly and all that stuff. If you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. So I completely changed it up. And all I'd been doing was getting really good at going out for a long time. So I was just really good at going quite slow for a long time, not good at going fast for a short time. So yeah, since then I trained properly and learned and got a heart rate monitor and a power meter and started to do really structured training. And then amazingly got selected. Like it was just really, really hard to get selected to go to London. And that was my goal, just to take part. And then as it got closer, a friend said to me, do you think you could even win a medal? Like, I don't know, like maybe. And it just started to become this, could I actually maybe win a bronze medal? I'd never, I think I made the podium that year at the World Championships. I got third. So I started to believe that maybe I could, but it still seemed, yeah, a massive stretch. But anyway, long story short, I did win the silver medal in what's called the time trial in London. And then, probably more interestingly to most people, myself and my teammate found ourselves racing to share the bronze medal in the road race, which was really a massive, massive surprise because in the road race, I'm combined with other women who have all their core muscles. They would have the stomach muscles and things. So I'd never expected to have a chance for a medal in that race at all.
Wow.
So we ended up crossing the finish line holding hands to try and share the bronze medal. And there was this big scandal that that's not, you can't do that in an Olympic Games and that's not what you should do. That's what you do in your village fun run. So the judges had a long time deciding what to do because our digital times were identical. So in the end, they looked at a photo and gave my teammate the medal, which I was fine with because I was happy with the medal I already had. But it was a really interesting process. But that, yeah, London was just so incredible to take part, and I'd never thought beyond that. But then, because I'd won a medal, the structure of sport in the UK means that you then have the option of having some funding. So then I realised, oh, I could maybe be an athlete as a full-time job, which I'd never thought. So that led to the road to Rio and another 4 years of hard training. And I was just really excited by the whole process of learning. It's learning that really stimulates me. It's not like I'm under no illusions. It doesn't make anyone a better person to win a medal. It doesn't really mean anything. Like it's so pointless. Who rides this crazy looking weird hand bike the fastest? It's kind of really not it's not important. But the process of learning how to get better at something and figuring out the detail and just using it as a challenge, I really enjoy. So that's how it went. Um, and then as it got closer to Rio, about a year or so out, I suddenly thought, if I'm ever going to win a race, this could be the one. And I never win in World Cups, World Championships. I've never been world champion. But this year for Rio, I just thought I felt like it was meant to be, and I just all my focus there, and I put all my belief there. I bought gold everything, like gold shoes, gold phone, gold laptop cover. Obviously not real gold, gold
Nice.
colors.
Yeah.
Um, I basically just kind of created gold before it even happened. So that all my friends were like, "When you win the gold," I'm going, "I don't know if I'm going to win it," but it was like, in a way, it had already happened before I got there.
Speak it into existence, and we can tell that you are a very humble athlete and champion the way you're talking about your medals. And people work their entire lives to get a medals, and you realize that there's higher purpose and achievement outside of just getting a medal, but it's the learning, it's the challenge, it's the friendships that you make. Great story. 41.86 miles per hour. Can you tell us what that means?
Oh, I don't know actually. What does it mean? I've got no
Isn't that your
idea.
your world record for going as the fastest in a hand cycling bike?
Oh, okay, probably. In fact, it's funny. It's funny, but we did a Zoom call about the land speed record just last week, and everyone knew their speed, and I was like, I don't know what I did. So, okay, yeah.
Wow, I've never met an athlete or spoken with an athlete who has broken some record of some sort, even if it's like a high school record, and didn't know their claim to fame. And not, I know that you have many claims to fame, but I'm surprised you don't know that number.
Well, my big aim for that was to get 79 kilometers an hour. That was my dream because that's kind of become my magic number. And I think I fell just short of it. I think it was about 70. I don't know what that works out as in kilometers. There was one run where I got just short of 79, but it ended up being an illegal run because the wind was slightly too strong. It was all up in the Nevada desert racing. It's this crazy event, the world land speed record every September. So people come from all over the world with unusual bike designs with fairings on them to just smash down this highway near a town called Battle Mountain, high in Nevada, and break these speed records. So I got involved with a project with Liverpool University from England, where this amazing team of students, really amazing team, had designed a handbike. And it's the first time a team had ever designed one from the university. And they worked together for 2 years to design it. And then I was fortunate to be selected as the female rider, but I never even sat in the bike until literally once for 10 minutes before we went to Nevada, and then
What?
suddenly got well, because I was away like training for races and stuff, so it was kind of crazy. I got one go in it before leaving Britain, and I was sharing it with a guy, so we had to keep changing things so it fitted both of us. So it definitely wasn't optimal. Could definitely go faster with the right approach and stuff, but it was just incredible, possibly one of the scariest experiences of my life, because you're in this really tight kind of capsule, you're completely locked in and strapped in with the lid on, and the only way you can see the road ahead to make the bike go as fast as possible, there's no window. So you've got like a phone screen connected to a periscope camera that just sticks a tiny camera hole in the top of the bike lid somewhere, and all you can see is like an image of the road in front of you, and you're going along at
Oh
70, 80
man,
kilometers an hour.
that's
It's wild.
terrifying.
I was the first few times I was absolutely. I just suddenly imagine what it's like to be a Formula One driver, where you have to just have all your senses completely focused on that one thing in front of you, nothing else.
And when you cycle, are you cycling next to people? Are you cycling next to people? Or are you just by yourself trying to break the record, and then somebody else lines up and goes?
Yeah, so the road is closed for 20 minutes in the morning. I can't remember now how long, but it's closed for a short time in the morning and a short time in the evening. And so people set off at I think every couple of minutes. So you have your
Okay.
time slot. It's very strict, because if you're too early or late, you risk the other rider getting too close to you. The handbike we were always last in the run because we're slower than the leg bikes, so we couldn't risk getting caught up, and that'd be dangerous. And then you have the whole road just to smash down it. Yeah.
That's wild. I'm sure glad that you weren't, like in a Formula One or a NASCAR race, those cars are right next to each other. I'm glad that those bikes weren't right next to you, because that'd be terrifying if you don't have a window to see out of. You're just using a camera.
Well, no,
So
and what was interesting for us is we have three wheels, so it's slightly more stable, but the leg bikes are two wheels. So they have more chance of getting knocked off by the wind, or when they come to stop, obviously we don't fall over when we stop because we've got three wheels, but the two-wheeler bikes that are breaking the records, they come flying in at, really, really fast, and then they have to try and stop and get caught by a team. So quite often they just roll off into the desert because the team misses them and they kind of just crash land.
Oh, jeez. Well, I'm sure glad that people out there are brave enough to do that because I don't know if I could just crash land and hoping that I'm breaking a world record. That's wild. You mentioned the number 79, and I know that's a very important number to you. Can you explain to us Quest 79 and the meaning of find your inner gold?
I'll try and do it as quickly as I can.
Okay.
So I won the 79th medal for Britain in Rio. And when I saw that had happened, I thought that's really weird because there'd been a kind of joke about number 79 with me all summer, which was to do with a hot drink cafe, and I always asked for my drinks extra hot, and they said, don't ask for extra hot, just say 79 degrees because that's as hot as we can make them. So you can imagine all my teammates were just like, you're such a diva, we can't believe you're asking for your drinks at 79 degrees. It became this joke. And then I won the 79th medal, and I was like, that's weird. And then all these things just kept happening with number 79. I'm like, that's really odd. And I'd always wanted to cycle around the world. I suppose after the gold, I thought maybe I'll retire. I don't know what I'll do. And I had this idea that I wanted to cycle around the world, but not without meaning, and also not just to sign out of my life for 4 years or whatever. So I decided to take a long journey on each continent, following a river, following water, so following an ocean or the river or some connection with water, and to raise £79,000 for a Spinal Injuries Association charity in Britain. And yeah, so that kind of began, and also to encourage other people to do something for themselves which they wouldn't normally do, like to get out of their comfort zone and just do something unusual. And in this process, even though I used to be a geologist studying gold, I'd forgotten that 79 is the atomic number of gold. Do you remember in the school
Dang.
chemistry periodic table? I was like, that is really weird as well. And anyway, I've since discovered that 79 degrees latitude and longitude is in Antarctica, and very skiable too. So the last journey remains. We've traveled a journey on each continent. Each of those journeys has been totally kind of independent, no guides. And the people that have come with me have been just random, different friends, sometimes strangers, who have wanted or been able to take time out to do that journey. And they've always been on a big journey themselves, I guess, within themselves as well, often, because whenever we do something that's a big adventure that puts us out of our comfort zone, we're usually on a big internal journey as well. And I've definitely discovered something special on each of those journeys, like an inner quality that's really come strong in it. So, um, following the Australia journey was following the longest river in Australia, and at the end, I really had never experienced feelings of gratitude as strongly as I did on that. It was really just this incredible experience of being grateful for what we have in our lives. And it's hard to describe. It sounds, it was a personal experience, but it's also led me to write about that and encourage other people to notice what they're grateful for in their lives. And other journeys have given me different things. The American journey was very much about acknowledging freedom and what gives us freedom and what keeps us constrained. And the two companions I was with on that trip had their own challenges, I guess, it's kind of maybe addictions. One of them was an alcoholic, and yeah, kind of people working through their processes with that. So each journey has brought out one of these special kind of inner gold qualities. And then the ultimate journey remains to Antarctica to create what we're going to call the pole of possibilities. So it's like a new pole, not the South Pole, not anything else, but just there's something iconic at 79 to represent all that's possible when we really connect with that inner part of ourselves that sometimes we're too scared to connect with, because it's kind of scary sometimes to go there with what we need to feel or acknowledge or whatever.
So much significance and meaning behind the number 79 for you. That is definitely not a coincidence. And I think what you're seeking and setting out to do is remarkable. Good luck in Antarctica. I know it's not going to be necessarily the most comfortable ride you've ever done in your life, but it sure will be fun. And who knows what you'll find out there, and the things that you'll learn about yourself and your teammates once you're out there. Karen, we'll move to the last 3 questions I ask every single guest. We'll bang these out real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. So number 1 is, what is your favorite quote?
Oh, I have quite a few favorite quotes. One of my favorites is, if you think you can or if you think you can't, you're right.
That's
And
true.
one of my other favorites is, if your face is swollen from the severe beatings of life, smile and pretend to be a fat man.
Oh, okay. So I've heard the first one before, and that's so true. Your mindset determines your outcome. But number 2, that second quote, I have not heard that one before, so I might steal that. Use it over here in
Well,
Texas.
it's kind of interesting. Like, in a way, it's sort of saying fake it till you make it, which I don't always think is right, because we have to feel what we need to feel sometimes and acknowledge that. But I also think there's a place for just getting on with it and, just doing your best and cracking through, even though you're feeling scared or doubtful or sad or whatever else.
I agree wholeheartedly. Number 2 is, how has being an underdog in your story shaped you into the person that you are today?
I don't know if yeah, who knows? Like, I believe that the difficult stuff of life is an opportunity to really grow and transform. And we can sit around and feel sorry for ourselves with the the shit that happens to us. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word. We
Oh,
can
you're
sit around
good.
and feel sorry, but um, but ultimately, we're not going to lead much of a life if we do that for ourselves or for anybody else. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for transformation when things get traumatic and tough, and that's where we grow and learn. So I guess although I'd never choose to be paralyzed or wish it for anybody, I'm also really grateful in so many ways for what it's given me and the very unique life it's enabled me to experience and lead.
Number 3, how do you define success, and why do you consider yourself successful?
Good questions. Um, oh, really good questions. What is success? I guess for me, people say, what legacy do you want to leave and stuff. Sometimes that feels very grandiose that any of us really have to get on a horse about what legacy we want to leave. But I do think each of us does have something, kind of a purpose in this life. And for me, what success is, if we've lived a life where we have been able to live a life that we're passionate about. And I believe if we're doing that, then we always make a difference for other people. And so for me, that's my definition of success. If something I've done by living the very fortunate life I've got to do all these adventures and live with all this stuff that I absolutely love to do, and if that's had a positive impact on even one or two people, then that's like very successful.
I agree. And you are inspiring many people, not only in England and Europe, but across the world. And thank you for being someone that we can look to in a time of tragedy, how you take that tragedy and turn it into something so much more positive than you could ever think of. Karen, how can my viewers and listeners connect with you? What are your public social media handles or your website that you can share with us?
Yeah, the easiest way is probably via my website, where emails come to me as well. So it's karendarke.com, Darke, Karen, Karen. Yeah, so just www.karendarke.com, and on the contact page, people can sign up there to receive some of my blogs, and I quite regularly blog post and create kind of just audio versions of those and send out newsletters. So that's a great way to connect with me. I am on Instagram. I'm at handbikedark, Twitter at kdark. But yeah, I'm out there around. I'm not great on social media, but website stuff, I'm on it, and the CC emails. So yeah.
Well, I will put all that information you just shared in the show notes. So anyone that's listening right now, click the link below. You can connect with Karen and make sure you stay up to date with her upcoming adventure in Antarctica. We wish you the best, and thank you for jumping on Underdog.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for sticking with us until the end of the episode. Karen is a remarkable woman, and I hope that this gave you encouragement to carry out your own goals and find success in everything that you have planned this week. Coming up next week, we'll feature a story with a blind musician who became a master of his craft. He has won Grammy after Grammy and has won Instrumentalist of the Year many, many years over the past couple decades. I promise you're not going to want to miss that story, and it'll be just as good as Karen's. Please help us promote Underdog Podcast by sharing links on social media with your family and friends, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It all helps. You can find all of our links online at scottkujak.com. So please check it out. Check out other guests we've had on the show, and let us know how we're doing. Let us know what underdog story has really spoken to you, or if there's somebody that you would like for me to bring on the show, let me know so I can reach out to them. Until next week, unleash your own underdog spirit and find the will to never give up.